The story of the so-called Curse of King Tut has been told for more than 100 years, and it continues to interest people all around the world. Many people have heard that the people who opened the tomb of the ancient Egyptian pharaoh, Tutankhamun, suffered strange accidents, sudden sickness, or even death. This story has been repeated in books, movies, TV shows, and newspapers, until it almost sounds like a real supernatural mystery. But when we look closely at history, we discover that the truth is very different from the legend. The real events are still fascinating, but they are based in normal human life, not in magic. To understand how the myth began, it is important to know who King Tut was, how his tomb was discovered, and why people became convinced that a curse existed. King Tutankhamun, often called King Tut, was a young ruler of ancient Egypt who lived more than 3,000 years ago. He became king when he was only a child, probably around 9 years old, after the death of the previous pharaoh. Because he ruled at such a young age, he was guided by advisors and priests. His time as pharaoh lasted only about 9 or 10 years, because he died very young, likely around age 18 or 19. Many pharaohs of Egypt built huge temples, led long wars, and created grand monuments. King Tut did not have time for such achievements, and for many centuries he was not remembered as one of the greatest Egyptian rulers. What made him world famous long after his death was not his short life, but the fact that his tomb remained hidden and almost completely untouched by thieves for thousands of years. When his burial place was finally discovered in the 1900s, the world was amazed, because it gave people a rare chance to see a pharaoh's tomb almost exactly as it had been prepared in ancient times. The person responsible for this discovery was an English archaeologist named Howard Carter. Carter had spent many years searching for King Tut's tomb in the Valley of the Kings, a desert area near the Nile River where many pharaohs were buried. For most of his career, he faced disappointments. Many experts believed there was nothing left to find, because so many tombs had already been uncovered and most had been robbed long ago. Carter, however, refused to give up. His work was supported financially by a wealthy English nobleman named Lord Carnarvon. Carnarvon was passionate about archaeology, and he believed in Carter's skill and determination. Year after year, they continued exploring the valley, digging carefully in the hope of finding something extraordinary. After years of searching, their money almost ran out, and Carnarvon considered ending the project. Carter begged for one more season of digging, and Carnarvon agreed. This final chance changed history. On November 4, 1922, Carter's workers found the top step of a staircase hidden under the sand and rocks. This staircase led downward to a sealed doorway. From the style of the plaster and the seal on the door, Carter immediately suspected he had found a royal tomb, and possibly the tomb of King Tutankhamun himself. When the entrance was finally opened, Carter looked inside through a small hole with a candle. All around him were piles of treasures, golden statues, bright jewels, beautiful furniture, chariots, boxes, and many other objects. When Lord Carnarvon, who stood beside him, asked, "Can you see anything?" Carter famously answered, "Yes, wonderful things." The discovery was one of the greatest archaeological moments in history, and news about it spread quickly throughout the world. At first, no one talked about a curse. The team was excited, the public was fascinated, and journalists wrote story after story describing the beautiful treasures that were being brought out of the tomb, but soon tragedy struck. In April 1923, only a few months after the tomb was opened, Lord Carnarvon died in Cairo. He had been staying in Egypt, helping to oversee the work and enjoying the excitement of the discovery. A mosquito had bitten him on the face, and later, while shaving, he accidentally cut the same spot. The wound became infected. And at that time, before antibiotics existed, infections were extremely dangerous and often fatal. Carnarvon became seriously ill and died from the infection. His death shocked many people, especially because he was relatively young and seemed to be enjoying good health just weeks earlier. As soon as the news of his death reached the newspapers, the idea of a curse began to grow. Some newspapers wrote dramatic headlines saying that the curse of the pharaoh had killed Carnarvon. These stories sold many copies because people enjoyed reading about mysterious events. Journalists quickly realized that linking the death to an ancient curse made the story more exciting and helped their newspapers get more attention. Some newspapers even invented strange details that were not true. One newspaper claimed that all the lights in Cairo went out at the exact moment Carnarvon died. Another one said that Carnarvon's dog, who was thousands of miles away in England, suddenly howled and died at the same moment. There is no real evidence that any of these dramatic claims were true. They were simply stories meant to entertain and shock readers. But once such stories were published, many people believed them, and the legend of a deadly curse began to spread. In the months and years that followed, a small number of other people connected to the tomb also died, and each time a death occurred, newspapers claimed that the curse had claimed another victim. However, when we examine the facts carefully, we discover something important. Most of the people involved in the discovery lived long, ordinary lives. There were more than 50 people who helped with the excavation or were present at the opening of the tomb. Only a few of them died within the next decade, and their deaths were caused by normal medical conditions that had nothing to do with the tomb. The person who should have been most at risk, Howard Carter himself, lived for 16 years after the discovery and died at age 64 from natural causes. If the curse were real, he would likely have been the first to suffer. Instead, he lived a long life dedicated to archaeology. So why did people become convinced that a curse existed? There are several reasons, and none of them involve magic. First, ancient Egypt had always seemed mysterious to people in Europe and America. Mummies, pyramids, hieroglyphs, and ancient rituals captured the imagination. Many books and stories had already been written about curses and haunted tombs long before King Tut's tomb was found. When something unexpected happened, like Carnarvon's death, it was natural for people to connect it to the ancient stories they already knew. Second, the idea of a curse was an exciting and dramatic story for newspapers, which wanted to attract as many readers as possible. Reporters exaggerated events or added mysterious details because it made their articles more interesting. Third, some people are naturally drawn to supernatural explanations, especially when events seem strange or sudden. Even though simple, medical reasons explained Carnarvon's death, many people preferred a more exciting explanation. Scientists have also suggested a few explanations that could make people believe a tomb was dangerous, even without magic. One idea is that ancient tombs, sealed for thousands of years, may contain harmful bacteria or mold spores. If someone breathes in these spores, they could become sick, especially if they have weak health to begin with. While this might explain some mild illness, it cannot explain sudden or dramatic deaths. And modern studies show that most of the workers who entered the tomb did not suffer any unusual health problems. Another explanation is psychological. If someone strongly believes that a curse is real, their fear can make them feel sick. This is known as the nocebo effect, where negative expectations create real physical symptoms. Fear itself can be powerful, especially when someone thinks they are in danger. Howard Carter never believed in the curse. He was a careful, scientific man who spent his life studying history, artifacts, and archaeology. In his journals and writings, he rarely even mentioned the idea of a curse, except to express frustration that newspapers were spreading stories that distracted people from the real importance of the discovery. Carter focused on documenting every object in the tomb, organizing the treasures, and protecting the site. As years passed and more evidence was gathered, it became clear that he was right. There was no supernatural curse, only a legend created by coincidence and imagination. Even though the curse was not real, the discovery of King Tut's tomb was extremely important. More than 5,000 objects were found inside, each giving clues about life in ancient Egypt. The famous gold mask of King Tut is one of the most beautiful objects ever created in the ancient world. There were golden statues of gods, precious jewelry, elaborate chairs, beds, boxes, chariots, weapons, clothing, food, and perfumes. These objects helped historians understand how pharaohs lived and what ancient Egyptians believed about the afterlife. They also allowed scientists to study King Tut's mummy and learn more about his health, his age, and even possible reasons for his early death. Without the discovery of his tomb, much of this information would have remained unknown. The story of the curse continues today for several reasons. People naturally enjoy mysteries, and the idea of a powerful ancient curse is exciting and dramatic. Movies, documentaries, cartoons, and books often use the curse story because it attracts audiences. Many people find it more interesting to imagine that the tomb was guarded by supernatural forces than to learn the simple truth. The legend has become a part of popular culture, which means it will likely continue to appear in stories for many years to come. The most important thing to understand is that the curse of King Tut is a myth. There was no written curse inside the tomb. No ancient inscription warned that death would follow anyone who disturbed the pharaoh. The few deaths that occurred after the tomb was opened had natural explanations. Most of the people involved lived long and peaceful lives. The idea of a curse came mainly from newspapers trying to make the story more exciting, combined with the human love for mysteries and dramatic stories. Even though the curse is not real, the story still teaches us something valuable about the way people think. Humans often try to connect events, even when they are not related. When something strange happens, people sometimes look for magical or supernatural explanations, even when simple explanations are available. At the same time, stories about danger, mystery, and the unknown are incredibly powerful. They shape our imagination and our culture. The curse of King Tut, even though it is not real, has become a symbol of the mystery of ancient Egypt and the excitement of archaeological discovery. It reminds us that history is not only a collection of facts, but also a mixture of stories, emotions, and human curiosity. In the end, the incident known as the curse is better understood as a lesson in how legends are created. A great discovery happened. A man who supported that discovery died of a normal medical problem at an unlucky moment. Newspapers needed thrilling stories, and the public loved mystery. Together, these elements formed a myth that has lasted for more than a century. The truth is that the curse of King Tut is a story humans invented, not a real danger from ancient times. Yet this legend continues to fascinate people all around the world, adding one more layer of wonder to the already amazing history of ancient Egypt.